Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Off the Rak, conversations on transformative leadership with yours truly, Walt Rakowich. And so if you're new to the show, I'm just really happy to have you on today. Okay, so staying on the theme of community that we started last month with Lori Rabinowitz and Joe Sanders, I'm thrilled to have Kourtny Garrett with us today. Kourtny's passion is to make our communities better than they are. She's focused on our cities and how we make them more desirable places to work and to live. And as I mentioned last month, look, leadership is not just about the influence that we have on other people, but it's also about the influence that we have in our communities. And you know what? That's on us. We got to make them better. And so it's our responsibilities to make them the best that we can be. So Kourtny, great to have you on with us. Just a little bit about Kourtny. She's been the president and the chief executive officer of the Downtown Denver Partnership since 2022. And that's an organization whose mission is to be the leading voice for private sector businesses in building an economically powerful city. She's previously held the position of CEO of Downtown Dallas, Inc., an organization devoted to the revitalization of the city of Dallas. And those of you who have had an opportunity to visit it, like me, 20 and 30 years ago versus in the last couple of years, you'll know that Kourtny did a bang-up job there. That city is amazingly revitalized. She has a background in community and government relations, and also, near and dear to my heart, retail real estate development. And she's also an honorary member of the Texas Society of Architects. And she has an incredible passion for community. And she was recognized 6 years in a row as one of the top 500 most powerful business leaders in Dallas. She also was a recipient of the Dallas Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award. Okay, Kourtny, enough of all the accolades. Great to have you on.
Well beyond the 40 under 40 list now, Walt, but thanks. Thanks for that.
Absolutely. No, it's super to have you on. All right, Kourtny. So I got to ask you a little bit of a softball question here to start off. You spent significant part of your years in Dallas, your career in Dallas, but you're from Denver, I think.
I am born at St. Joe's.
All right. So serious question. Did you ever give up the Broncos and become a Cowboy fan?
There is just something about the place that you're born that I could never quite get past. I mean, I grew up when I was young here. It was the Elway days. It was the, really rich moments in history of the Broncos. So that was always near and dear to my heart. That being said, the Cowboys are such a part of Dallas culture. So growing my adult life there, it was really hard not to indoctrinate it. But no, to this day, I will be a tried and true Broncos fan for life.
Okay. All right. That's great. Much to the chagrin of those living in Dallas, but
yeah. Sorry, friends. Not a big secret, though.
Yeah, right. Well, I hate to say I'm a Steelers fan. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which there's a lot of people that like it, and there's a lot of people that don't like that.
Yeah, you got to keep that rub. I mean, the truth of it is we're not a huge sports-driven family anyway. I appreciate it from a professional sense. So, not too terribly competitive, but do love a good game.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your passion.
Yeah.
You spent nearly 20 years of your life in downtown Dallas, Inc. First as a managing director, then you worked your way up through the organization to become president and CEO. And so you have a passion for building social, cultural, economic vibrancy in our cities, just trying to make them better places. So first and foremost, where does this passion come from? Like, how did you get this passion for cities? And also maybe talk a little bit about what motivates you, what drives you.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think at the core of our business, or at least the way that I've defined it, it's really building community and building connections through a place. And if you boil that down and you think about just from a personal experience standpoint, our memories, our experiences, all are set within the backdrop of a place. Whether it's your engagement proposal, where you had your first child, where you experienced travel for the first time. If you think about those memories that are ingrained, there is this backdrop generally of really thriving, fantastic places. So with that, it really has set the foundation for me of wanting to create spaces and places that deliver that kind of experience, those memorable moments, places for people to connect and be together. It's such a unique aspect of our business, and that's really what has driven me in it. Honestly, it goes back to my very first time being in a big city. So I grew up as more of a suburban kid in North Texas, outside of Dallas. We really didn't even go into the city very often. And even when we were here in Denver, we were mostly in Aurora and in the suburbs and in Golden. So I didn't grow up in a true urban environment. And in high school, I had one of those unique opportunities to do a 3-week tour of Europe where you're seeing a city every 18 hours, it feels like. But I will never forget the moment. I was 17 years old when I stepped into Rome and just had that feeling. It's the energy, it's the vibrancy, it's what you're pulling from the city, and you're looking and you're curious. And those really, the best way I can ever describe it is it's this intangible feeling, right? And from that moment, I didn't understand what it was, that there was a career in it. And you fast forward through different moments in my career and in my education, that it all started to come together, and realize that there are people in this world who have the opportunity to build those types of places. And so that's what motivates me at the end of the day, is I get to deliver that for myself and my kids and the community, and create the spaces where people connect and make memories.
That's great. And when you talk about Rome, it actually reminds me, I think it's my most favorite city in the world.
It's
I mean,
incredible.
it is
It really is.
absolutely incredible. I just love going there. And just when you think about going back 2000 years
Right.
and what was happening there, and just see it right there in front of you
Yeah.
is just absolutely amazing. I have
It
to.
is. It's the choreographed chaos of cities, I call it a lot of times, where you don't know what's coming at you, but you know you love every minute of it, no matter what it is. Right.
Yeah.
That's what Rome and cities like that mean to me.
Yeah. Now, do you live in the city now, or do you live outside the
We
city?
do. We do. We live just over right across 25 in Lodi. So I'm 2
Okay.
blocks from the pedestrian bridge right into downtown. My bedroom window looks into the skyline.
Okay. So you do
It's
see it every day.
oh, we see it. We live it. My son rides his bike to the little skate park right there.
Yeah.
So we're definitely, that's our life. We lived downtown in Dallas for 17 years. So that's what we do as a family.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
So, Kourtny, we focus a lot of time in the show talking to leaders about what makes them tick,
Yeah.
and how great leadership can make a difference in, the workplace, in your life, so many areas, right?
Mhm.
And so our cities need leadership, don't they?
Absolutely.
Um, and leadership from a lot of different angles, from government, from business, from the people in the community itself. So can you talk to us just a little bit about what does that leadership look like in the cities, and what does good leadership in our communities really look like? Because I think it's important that people understand they have a responsibility to lead in their communities. And what does that look like to you?
It's so true. The most successful cities, where you see initiatives moving forward, where you see happy communities, it is all in my mind about one word, and that's partnerships. And when you look at the intersection, organizations like ours are so unique because we sit at this intersection of the public sector, the private sector, and the community. And when you look at the magic that can be made when all of those entities are coming together, that's when you see think about Union Station redevelopment. When you had public investment, private sector planning, community support for building a new district, essentially, in the center of our city, and this belief in downtown, that's when you see these big moves really coming to fruition. At the same time, those types of partnerships also, I'm a huge believer in the big, bold move and the everyday, the infrastructure, the community, the network, and sort of the fabric of what community is. So at the same time, while we're all together in an ideal world, right? We're all together pushing the same big initiatives forward. We're also thinking about what do our communities need on an everyday basis. And again, it can't be done by one sector alone because we need all of those different tools. Our organization, for example, sitting at that intersection, we're not policymakers. We are not law enforcement. We're not regulators, but we are in the business of collaboration and influence and facilitation. And through that, we have this really unique perspective to be able to see what it means to have the kind of the maestro pulling all of the pieces together. So I'm a big believer in that word, partnerships, inviting everybody to the table, listening to different perspectives, making ideas better. I think that is absolutely the core of what leaders in our cities and our communities need today.
So, and I am curious, do you find businesses more or less committed to partnerships in cities today than they were, let's just say, when you started way back when in Dallas?
Right, right. I think it's remarkable that it has remained, was committed, has been committed, and is still, we see the business community very committed. In fact, it might even be particularly in times of stress, and we saw this during the 07-08 recession as well, with organizations like ours that are laser focused on local issues. We've actually seen an infusion of interest and engagement and leaning in by even international companies who are based or have significant presence here because they want to reinvest in their local community. We're having more and more people come forward and say, we're doubling down here at home because our community means so much to us. So I've never really seen that interest and support and partnerships wane, but I definitely think there are moments in time where we see inflection points because of the critical nature of whatever is happening at that given moment.
Yeah, ebbing, a lot more ebbing and flowing, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Kourtny, what about you? I mean, as a leader, you got government, which is so different than business. Obviously, maybe similar interests, but so different than business. You got people in the communities. You sort of sit at the intersection of all this stuff, and you've got to kind of pull people together as a CEO. And you did it in Dallas. You now do it in Denver. Can you talk about your own leadership and maybe some lessons that you learned in over the years in leading, and maybe perhaps how you lead?
Right, right. I think one word, whenever I'm asked that question, the first word that always pops into my mind is authenticity, which leads into other things. But for me, particularly coming up, I always joke that I peaked early in my career with a lot of credit, and I think we'll talk about this later, a lot of credit to many, many people who helped support. But coming up and understanding that the way that I lead may be different than a predecessor or maybe different than a particular politician. And when you're coming up in a world that is so heavily driven by the political realm, the real estate realm, these really heavy positions that require a lot of leadership, there are many different styles. So for me, I had to kind of figure out what is my style and be able to lean into that to really authentically be able to show up and make a difference. So what that means for me personally is leading from a place of collaboration. And it goes back to my belief in partnerships and leadership in our city. To me, if I'm bringing a new idea forward, rather than stand there at a podium or bang my fist in front of a city council, for example, and say, this is what you need to do, I find it to be more effective if we're working with city staff, if we're working with council members, we're coming up and shaping an idea together. Same thing is true when we're building a new work plan, or we do an annual work plan here at the partnership, and we have our entire team participate. So to me, it's really this matter of collaborating, of finding the nuggets of the great ideas and pulling all of those together, and then being able to then have that commitment. That's the other piece of it. When you collaborate, then some people call it accountability, some people call it commitment, but the more minds you have at the table who are owning whatever that initiative is or program or solution, the longer term commitment you have from all those different entities. Because yet again, it goes back to the previous question, no one agency or entity can do what we do alone.
So in order to collaborate, you got to be a listener, I think.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to listen to other people.
Absolutely.
And maybe even give in from time to time here and there
Very much. Yeah. You
make sure that
learn.
everybody gets a little bit of what they want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to do that in a way that's very sincere. We have a lot of those kind of conversations here, and understanding, where we can kind of, where it's important to give in and where it's important to lean in. So we talk a lot about that, and that's definitely a part of it. I think the other piece, listening and trust, I would say that's another really fundamental piece of my and our ability to be successful, is we have to operate with a level of trust, whether it's keeping confidentiality around a real estate deal, or building relationships with elected officials, or even one another. We have to operate with trust. So that's another core tenet of my daily existence.
That's well, trust is one of the central tenets of a book that I wrote a couple of years ago about leadership, called Transfluence. And I think trust is really the currency of business. Different than money. I truly believe that without trust, you have nothing in business. So I
Wholeheartedly agree.
could not agree with you more on that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm a real estate guy.
Yep.
And I've worked in the industry for over 40 years. And, frankly, from a real estate perspective, everybody's biggest worry is downtown office space.
Absolutely.
Right. And, what's going to happen after COVID now? You got all the shadow vacancies and even in Denver. I mean, Denver is really a very, I think, vibrant city and growing, unlike some cities, like a weed. At least it seems like it is. And it's a preferred market, preferred place to live. But we still have massive issues with, rising vacancies. I don't think any downtown area is really immune. And we also, I think, since COVID, we've seen, at least I believe, a tick up in crime and homelessness. And, I think COVID kind of changed the landscape a little bit, and maybe we're getting back to what it was prior to that. I don't know. So for somebody that is really committed to creating vibrancy in the downtown area, how do you think about that problem, number one? And then I'd like you to talk a little bit about, if people were moving to those cities, how do you talk to them about it? Is there a place they can go to get information about that? And so maybe you can kind of talk to me about that issue broadly.
Absolutely. Well, we just put out, I'll start at the end of your question because it sets up the beginning. We just published our State of Downtown 2023 report. And the headline of that report, which is available on our website, downtowndenver.com, the headline of that report is really a tale of two cities. Or, as my dear friend who runs downtown Seattle, because yes, this is true of pretty much every large city in America right now, it's a moment of multiple truths. So if you look at our report, you see residential still incredibly strong, 100,000 residents living in the greater downtown area. We added 1,300 new residents just in the last year, 3,000 units under construction. That'll increase our population by 10% over the next 2 years. And that's just with the projects that are under construction today. That doesn't count the number of planned projects, say in Golden Triangle, where we're projecting in the next 5 years, we could see up to 10,000 new residents alone, just in that district. So residential market remains incredibly strong. Even our retail and restaurant, mostly driven by food and beverage at this point from a retail perspective, 27 new businesses opened this year, which is not a story that's getting out in the media as much. We're reporting more on the closures than we are on the openings. And we've actually not lost a local business along the 16th Street Mall corridor since really within the last about year and a half. So there's some really important dynamics there to show the strength of the market. Hospitality, incredibly strong. RevPAR is back to pre-pandemic levels. Convention center traffic back to pre-pandemic levels. So we're seeing all of those really positive indicators. And then, as you said, here's the other side, right? So all of those aspects are true. And we have a 24% reported vacancy according to CoStar in our commercial office market. We all know that when you ground truth that, in many buildings, it's much, much higher. Yeah. And it's particularly in that former Class A 80s trophy type building stock. Again, true across the country. There's an Avison Young office market analysis that was put out earlier this year that shows that is true in every major city again in the United States. So we're all grappling with what to do. So what is our message in all of that, right? For us, and my perspective, and again, this is part of the glass half full probably, market disruption to me breeds innovation. And what we've experienced in our cities, and particularly with the outsized impacts of the pandemic on our downtowns, is change that's generational in magnitude. So if you go back over the course of history of downtowns, you see all of these points that have led to major evolution, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or the oil and gas crisis, and you see where our cities change. Typically, we have a good maybe 10 years to ease into those changes. So those of us who are in the urban planning world, or those of us who are in the economic development world, are starting, we're able to predict what might be able to come and adjust accordingly. With the pandemic, our cities changed in the course of literally one day.
Yeah.
When we all went to mandatory shutdown, and we all watched 100,000 people. Here in Denver, it was 110,000 employees. In Dallas, it was 130,000. I was watching from my 71st floor office at Bank of America Tower in Dallas the day that it was mandated shutdown. I was looking down on Main Street and literally saw people walking down the street holding their computer monitors. I mean, this was one day our cities changed.
Right.
So to me, my real charge and my calling is to say, this is the moment for the biggest, boldest catalytic moves that we can make. It's our opportunity to create the vision, build consensus around the vision for what downtown will be in the future, and then pull the partners and the resources together to make that happen. I think it's an exciting moment to work with the community to say, what do we want downtown to now be? Because it's almost a blank canvas with a really strong foundation, because Denver is such a strong market. So that's where I see, yes, there's the urban doom loop and rising vacancies, and we're seeing buildings go into receivership, and not to look through rose-colored glasses and say those aren't very, very challenging and devastating issues. I do believe that they open up significant opportunity that will be a magnitude that we can't even imagine if we play our cards right and make a few of those big catalyst moves.
And can we get government there? Does government think that now? And I know that's a broad term, but
no, and I do believe that we're seeing the public sector, and I'm going to speak in broad terms, coming around. So if you look at cities pre-pandemic, on the whole, and I'm thinking of comparable cities, whether it's Dallas, Denver, Houston, Charlotte, Seattle, Chicago, you saw a lot of reinvestment in downtowns in, say, the early to late 90s. A lot of public investment, tax increment financing, development authorities, MMDs, all of these things really pushing to revitalize urban centers. And then as those started to hum, you saw the public sector start to walk away and say, it's time that we pay attention to other areas of the city. And that was very true. I look back in Dallas, and there were 2 tax increment finance districts in that downtown that really catalyzed a lot of 40 vacant office building conversions, the rise of 13,000 residents over the course of 10 years, those types of statistics. Nearing pandemic years, so say 2018, 2019, the city said, we're sunsetting those TIFs. We're not going to reinvigorate them. Downtown is moving. It was not until the pandemic, it was about 6 months in, where we had the public sector come back around and say, no, we may not be back in a blight situation today, but we can see, we helped paint the picture. We can see that we could get there if we don't intervene. I've seen that same switch here in Denver, and I've seen it in other cities as well, where you're having that come back around to say, our cities cannot be successful if our downtowns are not successful. It's the old, so goes downtown, so goes the city. Those are, I think, really, really important core tenets that we need to continue to reinforce with the public sector. But I see it's a much more clear path than what it may have been just a couple of years ago.
that's encouraging to hear, because as you say, we need collaboration.
Absolutely.
And in order to bring the cities back, I think we need government on the side of business as opposed to on the opposite side, which I think in a lot of cities one could fairly say that they were. So hopefully that will come together over time.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you one quick story. When I first came to Denver, of course, I did the rounds with all of the meet and greets with council members. And I won't name names, but there was a council member from a district outside of downtown who our first meet and greet, he very respectfully said, I don't think we should put another penny into downtown. I need more attention in my district. I appreciate what you're doing. It's lovely to meet you. Thanks, but no thanks. Fast forward 9 months, he started going back into his council office for meetings. And I walked into his office for a regular quarterly update. And he looked at me and said, I was wrong. I'm down here now, and I see that downtown needs our help again.
Mm.
And that to me was just an indicator that the silver lining of some of our challenges is because they've become so visible that the public sector recognizes we need those interventions.
All right. Well, I've got my fingers crossed, and I hope you're right. Keep working at it, though. All of us.
Every day.
All right. So, I'm going to ask you about two of your mantras, as you call them. You've mentioned in previous interviews. One of them, when you worked in Dallas, you said that one of your personal mantras was that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they're created by everybody. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. It goes back to my philosophy and why I do this. To me, my work is about building community, building places for people. So you can't do that, in my opinion, without everyone at the table. Because who am I to say, this is the place, Walt, that you will enjoy, right? I don't come from your background. I don't come from your culture. So I think we have to have that holistic view from all aspects of community. And when we think about downtown Denver, we're doing a revisioning strategy for 16th right now. And to me, 16th is the signature spine of our city that should represent every aspect, every community in Denver, because it is the place. It was the #1 tourist attraction for how many years, right? So this is the place where people come. So it should be the absolute showcase where everyone feels welcome, everyone is represented. And you can't do that from just sitting in one individual's view, no matter how great of a planner you might be. So that's a lot of where it comes from. To me, one of my favorite and least favorite questions that people ask is, Kourtny, what's your vision for downtown? Well, I can tell you what I want downtown to be for me and for my family, but who am I to say, again, that that's your downtown? So I often come back and people kind of laugh and say, well, that's not a very strong position, but I feel like my job is to implement the vision for the community. So I will never come in and predispose to a new community that I think this is what your vision should be. It takes listening, building trust.
Just going to say that.
Right? Yeah. So that's where it comes from.
That's great. The other, you made another quote one time. You said, you ask yourself, am I creating the world that I want to live in? Because you just said something that's a little bit different than that, because it might not be the world that you want to live in.
Right.
Right. But, that's an active thing. Am I creating the world that I live in? And, actively, am I doing the things I need to do?
Yeah.
How's that mantra driven your career? And how's that shifted your perspective over time?
Yeah. It's really rooted in the fact that, as I said, my husband and I lived downtown for 17 years. We had our kids in downtown. Our kids were raised in downtown. We are those people who are predisposed to love an urban environment and always will. So that's part of why asking myself, is this the city that I want to live in? So when I started in my career in my early 20s, you can imagine what that's about, right? It's how are we building the next great restaurant? What's the next great bar? How are we building cool events that, you know, the young professional wants to attend? And then, you know, I feel like my life has sort of reflected the evolution of downtown since the 90s, because it starts with that young professional, and then lo and behold, we age and we have kids and we're growing more mature in our career. So a lot of my work in Dallas was built around neighborhood initiatives, schools, parks, building that fabric that families need, because as soon as you do that, then all of the other pieces start to come into play. So it's kind of this evolution of life. And that's another piece that we're looking at with the 16th visioning, is that the evolution of the buyer in life, the life stages of the buyer, and looking at the different things. So that it was kind of a gut check. I mean, yes, I think both are still very much true. I ask myself the question of, do I want to live here? Because to me, that's a demonstration of, am I building quality of life for anyone? And then it's the next layer of that question is, am I building a place that other people want to come to as well?
Right.
And it's also, I mean, I have to say, a lot of my, like any parent, a lot of my work is driven by my children. And am I building a place where my kids will want to be, you know, and that helps to drive a lot as well.
Well, I hope you are in Denver, the city of Denver, because we frequent there quite a bit. We go downtown a lot, and I want to continue to be able to do that and enjoy it. And we need folks like you that are working hard to try to do it.
Yeah.
I have two last questions for you. Stepping back from a leadership perspective, I think exceptional leaders, Kourtny, are those that kind of, they do the little things around the people that are around them. You know, we always think about leadership. Sometimes we think about presidents of the United States. We think about, you know, people that are in big positions. But the fact of the matter is that we all lead every day. I tell people all the time, we're all leaders, whether you're leading a flock or not. And sometimes I think it's just a question of doing the little things around the people that are around you. So I'm curious, have you ever seen someone who did something small that maybe positively influenced someone else, or perhaps somebody did something to you that was small but really influenced kind of your career, or had an impact on the way that you are as a person?
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite sort of small gestures that has just meant the world over the years, I had a handful of board members throughout the course of my career, and I've been incredibly lucky to have mentors and advisors and people who have acknowledged my passion and my drive at a very young age, to constantly be giving the atta girls. But there was certainly a handful of board members who would send unexpected handwritten notes out of the blue. Just a little card with a little note, "You're doing great." And then there would oftentimes be maybe a few sentences about something really specific that they had noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And that, to me, particularly in a business that can be very, I take this so personally, if you can't tell. So when we have the down days, it's really a down day, because it's just kind of this gut punch when we're investing so much of our own personal passion. So to have those types of things that just unexpectedly land on my desk, like those were such sweet moments and meant so much to me in my leadership journey, that a board member, even before I had an executive title, that a board member would recognize something like that.
There's nothing like an attaboy,
right?
when you need one, right?
Yeah.
Now, have you tried to do the same thing with some of the people around you?
I absolutely. I will tell you though, it's not something that I'm as successful as I'd like to be. You know, you really have to carve out time. And that's one of my intentions right now, is to carve out blocks of time to be able to really meaningfully give back in that way. Like, you literally have to calendar it in the world that we live in today. So that over the last few months, it's funny that this is coming up right now. Over the last few months, I've really pushed myself, because it takes structure and accountability. But man, it feels so good, and on both sides when you do it.
I get you. Nothing like receiving a nice note from somebody, especially somebody you really respect, that you know
Exactly.
stepped back and took the time to write it.
Absolutely. So true.
Okay, so last question. I ask all my guests this, so I'm not picking on you on this one, but I think attitude matters a lot in life. And I just think having an attitude of gratitude is really being positive in the world helps in your leadership journey. So I want to ask you, what are you most grateful for?
Yeah.
And is there a person that influenced you in your life that you're really grateful to?
Yeah. Well, personally, I cannot answer that question without first always saying I am so lucky to have 11-year-old twins who are healthy and happy and have embraced Denver. And it's just really, really incredible. So I wake up every day with a huge amount of gratitude to have what I have, because we all know how quickly things can change. And if there's nothing else we've learned over the last few years, is truly how quickly and unexpectedly things could change. So I do wake up every day and create that intention to say thank you for that. Professionally, I kind of mentioned this before, but I have just had an incredible number of people who recognized and supported my leadership journey. While I was in Dallas, the board very much, even early on, said, you know, we never call it succession planning, but we see things in you. We want to talk about a long-term development plan, supported me going back to school, supported getting me involved and on boards when I was still very young in my career, and just really helping to build that pipeline, whether it was going to be with the downtown organization or another organization in Dallas. So I'm absolutely incredibly grateful for that. In terms of any individual, it's really hard to choose one. And this is where I'll get a little bit of woo-woo on you, because I'm also a yoga instructor and I have kind of my second persona in life. But I wholly believe that different people are brought into your life and in your universe for different reasons at different times. So that's another thing that I really try and be intentional and present to accept when I'm meeting new people, and understanding what is this that our connection is bringing to my life, or ensuring that if I'm being brought into someone else's life, that I am delivering something in return. So there's that reciprocity. And I will tell you, there is no better example than the community in Denver since we arrived, and the way this community has wrapped their arms around us personally and professionally, whether it's referring us to pediatricians and hairdressers, creating new friend networks, which when you move in midlife with your family and building a whole new network coming from a place where you'd built 30 years of personal and professional connections, you can imagine that that's a pretty daunting thing. And to be able to 2 years later say, my husband has a thriving business, we have a thriving friend circle, I have an incredible professional network, and feel very grounded and rooted. To me, that says some huge amounts about the people in Denver, and people I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for.
You know what, that's music to my ears. It's obvious that you've got an attitude of gratitude, and it's obvious that you have a terrific attitude. And we wouldn't be making the progress that we've made as a city, I think, without you. So I just wanted to thank you and tell you also that I'm grateful that you came on today to do this.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just awesome that you're on Off the Rak. And I'd just like to thank everybody that tuned in today, who made the decision to join us. Great to have you on. Hopefully you learned a little bit today. I did. And wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But also I'd like to encourage you to keep an eye out for future Off the Rak interviews, and also check out my LinkedIn newsletter, which is called Off the Rak Plus. We have episodes of prior interviews, we have resources, we have transcripts, and more there. So please check that out as well. So to kick off next year in January, we're going to be interviewing Chester Elton, who is one of the top business writers of all time. He wrote The Carrot Principle. He wrote All In. He wrote Leading with Gratitude. He's written 12 books. And so I think you're really going to enjoy this guy. He's Canadian, and he is just terrific. Talk about a ball of energy. And so until then, I encourage all of you to be human and really find a way to make a difference in somebody's life today. Do it in a positive way. Thank you. Happy holidays to everybody. And Kourtny, thank you again. Great to have you.
Thank you, Walt. Such a pleasure.
Take care, everybody.